Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Rowe, and it's time to review Gladiator 2. This is the newest film from Ridley Scott, of course. He's directing the sequel to Gladiator. You know, Ridley Scott's been super hit or miss lately. I thought The Last Duel was really good. House of Gucci, not so much. Napoleon was a well-shot movie that was an absolute mess in terms of story. So we're going into Gladiator 2, pretty low expectations, right? But there's been a level of buzz that those films have not received, and it's being said to perhaps be his best since The Martian. And at this point, I don't know if it's like a coincidence if Ridley Scott makes a good movie, but Gladiator 2 doesn't take away my new opinion, which is that he has the sensibilities of like a 5-year-old, which may or may not be in his favor. Overall, I feel Gladiator 2 was made because he wanted to see some like cool action shit. Like, oh yeah, what if we got like this camera angle? Wouldn't it be awesome? That'd be so cool. And the guys come and the ships come and they do this and it's like, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of Ridley Scott these days when he makes an action movie. What do you mean? But the camera angles weren't cool. Sometimes, I mean, there were a lot of camera angles. Let's put it that way. Like I thought, a lot of coverage. My takeaway from the cinematography was they shot a lot of footage. Sometimes with the action scenes, I felt like I was getting too many images from too many different places. Yeah, it's not exactly like a carefully composed movie visually. It's not that the cinematography isn't competent, but I think that the spectacle really comes from just the size, the gargantuan size of the sets, the incredible amount of effort that must have gone into the costuming. There was a $300 million budget that went into this movie. I'm happy to report that you can see the budget on screen, and it doesn't look like they just threw the budget at the visual effects and shot a lot of it on a blue screen and decided to put it together later. Like, they built these sets. They built this Coliseum. I think the visual effects were very well utilized. It felt more tactile than other blockbuster films. Yeah. And I didn't just feel like I was living inside of a green screen. And I will say that the coloring on this film is also better than a lot of washed out blockbusters and Marvel films that we see. Or Ridley Scott's most recent films. This is really delivering what audiences, I think, are looking for and, you know, deserve when they're going to see a film that has this much money put into it. It's a big, bloody, action-packed spectacle. It's a great film to shove popcorn in your face to, I think. If you're just into action movies and blockbusters. It's no Dune 2, it's no Mad Max. I wouldn't even say it's a Furiosa. As far as the story goes, there were enough characters, enough players with clashing motivations that my interest was kept the whole runtime. And I would say that that's also an indication of it being above par to other blockbusters, because with most action films, I think the story is just utterly boring and uninvolving, and it doesn't matter what the action is, I just can't even engage. I had fun with some of the little twists and turns and backstabbings that were going on here. I agree this is going to be a crowd pleaser. It's delivering on what people want to see. Maybe not so much, though, in the vein of this is a sequel to Gladiator 1. I don't think it really has the emotional core that film did, where it can play like a straight drama. I mean, this one's really about the thrills. My feeling on action films is it doesn't matter to me what's going on the screen unless there are characters I care about, and then suddenly I'll be invested in everything the film's giving me, including the action. And I was kind of on and off here. I didn't feel roped in until Connie Nielsen's character showed up. Paul Mescal's character throughout the story felt pretty uninteresting to me. I didn't leave the theater thinking much about him. Denzel Washington is an absolute scene stealer here. He's magnetic and he injects this charisma into the character. He did not have to do that. You didn't have to go there with the character. You didn't have to eat every line like that. But boy, did I love that performance. He's an actor who takes risks, who puts a little twist on every line. Like you look at it on the page, you might think, well, it makes sense to attack it this way. He's always going, he's going to left hook this way. He's doing an undercut this way. Like, he's making unpredictable choices and he's having fun with it because he's just an actor of, the greatest caliber. And it's really fun to see him play with the role in this way. It is definitely one of the great on-screen villains that we're going to have this year. I also think his character is well written. Like, he's got enough of a backstory to be involved with him, and you don't know exactly where he's going. That performance and the character definitely brought the film up a peg for me. Connie Nielsen, I thought she was great. She's not on screen quite as much as the men, but from her first scene, like, she really brought me into the emotional core of the film, and her character as well, I find is really interesting. And she's perhaps sitting on the deepest emotional wounds, and she's put in some of the most challenging situations. Pedro Pascal
was very good. I would just say maybe he wasn't in the movie as much as I thought he was going to be.
I'm the Emperor of Rome. I talk like this the whole movie. I didn't love him here. Yeah.
Oh, I think I liked him more than
no. He had his moments.
Like, no, I actually really liked him. You know what? Now that I think about it,
I liked him better in Last of Us and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I don't know. I just thought he was a bit stiff here.
But he did have a little bit of nuance to play with.
Paul Mescal's performance.
Yeah, I gotta be honest here. I was not a huge fan of the performance, and I really had to ask myself why, because I've loved Paul Mescal in everything I've seen him in. I think this is a strange case where his performance makes so much more sense for an indie film where he's like restrained and stewing. But here, he kind of lacks that big screen charisma.
Yeah.
And I also think he's playing too low for the big screen and for the genre that we're in. Like Denzel Washington, especially in comparison to Mescal's more muted performance, I think is more of what the movie needed. Even though his character is more quiet and repressed, I think we needed to see that on his face in a more explicit way. It didn't sell as much that he was quietly stewing and he had this more neutral expression. And I understand that works for indie filmmaking, but it just didn't work as well here.
I think he's playing a bit too sad boy, and I think that he needed to play a little bit more cool guy. Like,
yeah,
it's just a blockbuster, you know? I think this movie needs that movie star charisma at the front of it. I think Russell Crowe certainly had that in Gladiator. I kind of think about what Paul Newman does when he's playing like kind of a cool guy, but he's just silent. You know, the character being very masculine, it might have made sense for him to kind of have one way that he's coming off and then another way that he really feels. Mescal's performance, he's playing the interior very strongly. He's a great actor. There are some scenes that I thought he was very good in.
Yeah.
Especially like his quieter conversations with the doctor. But yeah, I just don't know if he makes that much sense to me in a blockbuster like this.
Yeah, or at least he didn't make that much sense with the choices he did, right? You know, the way Ridley Scott films have been going has been convincing me that the actors are bringing whatever they want and he's not really like challenging it or pushing back, which does create a kind of cool amalgamation of performances and styles of performance. Like in House of Gucci, it was kind of a fascinating train wreck of performances, like clashing against each other. Even Napoleon, like I didn't like what Joaquin Phoenix did for that. It just felt strange, but at the same time, I was like, that's a fucking choice. Like, at least I can see an interesting angle on this character. Do I think it works? Like, no. But you know, Joaquin Phoenix is like basically came off as absolutely pathetic in Napoleon, which doesn't resonate with somebody who is like trying to take over the world. And in this movie, Denzel Washington like made all these amazing choices, and then Mescal, like I think he just needed more of a direction.
I did think that there's something to latch on to with how the film is portraying this world where like the elites get to decide everything and there's nothing for anybody else, and the only opportunities in this world are just to become another elite or to remain a slave. Like I actually liked that, and the speech delivered at the end just kind of made me feel like, yeah, there's not really that much here, is there? But yeah, I thought that this movie was an above average popcorn flick. I would give the movie a 7 out of 10.
I agree it was an above average blockbuster, but the level I care is like 6 out of 10. Ultimately, I feel somewhat indifferent to its existence and don't feel like I needed to see it. But you might feel differently. It just depends on what you come to the movies for. And I do think if you are primed to like it, it's got the goods for you. Now we could talk about awards. We've talked about awards already for our patrons. You know, those fellas are getting the goods. They're getting that early access, those early reactions. So if you'd like to become a member, feel free to sign up. $2 a month. It ain't so bad. You're not going to break your bank, and we appreciate it. We could start with what we think this film's definitely going to get nominated for. Denzel Washington. I think he's in.
It's not a definite, just because if the movie happens to have like underwhelming reactions and the kind of thing where they just get worse and worse as time goes on.
No. They're going to be good still.
No, they'll be good.
It has enough good reactions and buzz so far. Even if the movie was okay.
If the movie's not in Best Picture, then okay.
No, he's still fine.
I'll give him a good shot.
He'll be okay.
I think this is definitely a player in many tech categories. The production design, costumes, as we mentioned, absolutely massive.
Yeah, and I think the costumes too, I would just like to shout out again. They were so detailed and engaging. Just the earrings, the jewelry. The makeup was good here, but probably not enough prosthetics.
The visual effects, I think, were pretty solid, and if Napoleon can get nominated, I think that I
think this would get visual effects.
The scene where the Colosseum's flooded and the boats are like getting each other, I think that would probably be like the scene to showcase. Yeah. Except for the sharks, maybe they should just not show them.
Some of the animals didn't look like animals.
The monkeys were like Like, and they weren't real
They
things.
were monkeys.
They weren't real animals. The rhino was a real thing. Sharks exist, but the monkeys were like weird creatures. And I don't know
They
why
were
that
weird
happened.
humanoid screeching things.
Yeah, they were like things that you'd have to kill in an action movie. You know what it probably was that we don't really want to see people tearing up monkeys, so let's kind of make
Right.
them creature look.
That's true. You know, if the monkeys looked like real monkeys, it would just be way too sad.
Yeah, I think
way
that's
too
probably
sad.
it.
That's a good point. So I guess that was artful on the behalf of the visual effects team. There's something else though, isn't there? Oh, sound. I think this has a good shot for sound.
Oh, there's a lot of it.
There's a lot of sound.
So yeah, I think
So
it's a
sound,
good shot.
VFX, production design, costume, supporting actor.
That's a really good. That's
haul.
what we think now.
And yeah, so does that make it close to Best Picture? I don't think this is a critic darling. by
it's
any
not a
means.
Top
Like,
Gun Maverick. It's
Yeah.
not like a new thing that we really need. It's just a solid popcorn
Right.
movie. Like I think
Right.
that's where we have to settle on this one.
Right.
I don't think that gets it into Best Picture. I think that to be a sequel and to get into Best Picture, it has to still feel like a super original movie. Like
It has
Top
to be
Gun
better
Maverick,
than the first usually. Better. Not
well,
even as good.
Like Avatar: The Way of Water or like a Lord of the Rings movie. These fantasy epics feel like they're still part of like this unfolding original series of films. Like I can buy that more. Top Gun Maverick felt like a totally new movie, separate from the first, that was necessary to nominate on its own terms. Like I don't know if Gladiator 2 feels independent enough of the first, superior to the first in enough ways.
Yeah, I don't even think it's a question of independence. It's more that it's not better than the first. I don't think it's going to have as much of a legacy. If you fell in love for the first one for the heart and the emotion, I don't think you're going to get that as much. And it would also need to be a huge box office success, like have so much goodwill coming in from the audience. The numbers are shaking up to look good, but not amazing. It's coming out on the same weekend as Wicked, where it will place at number 2. This film might not ever reach number 1 at the box office.
Well, I mean, Barbenheimer happened, but
Yeah.
I think Wicked might drown out that populist hype for it.
I also just don't think this has prospects in best directing or best screenplay. Like, it just feels like a reach.
It's weird seeing people put Ridley Scott at number 1 for director, or like really up there in directing. Like
It wouldn't, even if it was
wouldn't
as good, even if
nomin-
it was in Best Picture, it wouldn't get nominated.
Yeah,
for
I don't
Best
understand.
Director.
I
That's not
don't-
how the directing branch is.
I've seen some hype for the score. I don't quite get it. I did like it at times. I just think of it as a pretty normal blockbuster type of score.
So those are the prospects. I do expect it's going to get all 5 of those nominations. It might be like Black Panther Wakanda Forever in that sense, won't it?
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
You kill a bloodthirsty monkey even if it was cute?